I am going to walk you through the Stair Step Arches card that was originally developed by Sonia Suedfeld. My card base is only going to be 4 inches wide, and I'll show you at the end why. But we are going to take a 4 by 11 inch piece of cardstock and score it at 1, 2, 3.5, 5, 7, and 9 inches. A second piece will be 4 by 2.5 and scored at 1/2 inches. Be sure to use a bone folder to get really crisp folds when doing this. It is going to alternate between mountain and valley folds, like stairs. For the smaller piece, there's a 1/2 inch piece that you're going to fold down, and we are going to glue that to the large end of the stair step so that we can continue our series. We just didn't have enough room in 11 inches of cardstock. I want to point out that it's really important to get this extra piece of cardstock attached very squarely and perfectly lined up when you attach it. I've had some trouble with it, and if you don't get it lined up, you're probably going to have to trim your cardstock so that it sits flat on the desk when it's open. You'll want everything level. I am going to clip this so the glue holds really well and set it aside to dry. Now I am going to work on the arches. I use the Everyday Arches pack from Stampin' Up. This is a set of 10 dies, and I used all but the largest 2. I alternated between the first one being DSP and the next one being cardstock, back and forth, and I created 2 piles so I could separate them out. Here I'm just showing you how they lined up. I want you to be able to visualize how I separated them out and have no confusion. Unfortunately, that idea of lack of confusion is going to be set aside right in a moment. I ended up cutting out the 2 smallest cardstock arches from the larger cardstock arches. You can see the hole that I had right here. And that was just a way of saving cardstock. It wasn't a lot of cardstock, but since this is a really cardstock intensive project, I decided it would also help with lightening up the card. You can see I numbered them. Number 3 and 4 were taken from 1 and 2. This doesn't really matter because the front of the card is going to be completely covered with the pattern paper or DSP. I'm going to speed this up so that we can get on to card making in this video. It's only been a couple of minutes, but now our card base should be good and dry and not going to be popping apart. You want to make sure it's going to sit level. And at this point, I noticed that not all of those lower points are making good contact with my desk. I have indeed done exactly what I asked you not to do, and that is I didn't quite line up that extra 2.5 inch piece. And I can see it right there in the fold. By folding up the card, I can see where the long edge is at. It is indeed the back panel. And so I am just going to take a pair of scissors and carefully trim off just over 1/16 of an inch off the one edge. It is a little thicker at the far end, and so that's where I took most of the length off. Now it sits really well on the table and makes contact on every one of those valleys. I know I spent a lot of time in this video talking about that and showing you what I was doing, but it really is important because otherwise your card isn't going to stand up as nicely as you want. Okay, here's one of my original cards, and I'm going to show you how I set all of the arches on the right edge of the card. And this one, which was my very first card, this one is like Sonia's original design, where the back starts on the left and the front arch is over on the right, and the middle two are staggered in between. It is completely up to you which way you want to do that. Okay, all this talk about arches, and I almost forgot to do something. The very next thing that we want to do is put our DSP paper on each of the steps. The printed instructions show a 3 3/4 inch wide piece, and then I say it's 3/4, 1 1/4, and 2 pieces of 1 3/4. What the best thing to do is to cut a 3 3/4 inch piece of paper by 5 1/2 inches and then dice it up. That way you have a continuous pattern, and all you have to do in the future is make sure that the pattern is right side up when you go to adhere it down. Okay, now it's time to adhere the arches. I'm only putting adhesive on the bottom inch, 1.5 inches of the arch. I don't want to get it any higher up. I am lining this up with a DSP, and the other thing I'm doing is making sure that I don't push the arch down into the fold too deep so that the stair step base won't close. Now I'm going to adhere the frontmost arch. This front arch doesn't have any flowers on it, but it is from the same sheet of paper. Don't worry, it's going to be thoroughly embellished. Now I'm just eyeballing the second and third arch and adhering them in. I'm continuing to check to make sure that I don't push them down too far into the fold so that the card doesn't close. I placed my largest acrylic block on the whole card setup so that it will have a minute to have good pressure and allow that wet glue to bond. I stamped out the sentiment in 2 different colors. One of them is Peaceful Pine and the other one is Berry Burst, and I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to use. I'm going to use my triple banner punch to create the dovetail. One of these banners is shaped like a pencil or an arrow. I use that pointed end to cut a dovetail. Doing this, I can dovetail any length of banner, as the rest of the banner is in my hand. Does anybody else record videos and feel like they are completely all thumbs when it comes to applying dimensionals while they are on video? I can't believe this took 45 seconds. So let's speed it up. I am using the butterflies from Aflutter along with the sentiment for this card. This is a really great set because all 3 butterflies are coordinated with a single punch. You stamp all 3 butterflies at one time and then you get to punch them out. It is a 2-step base and shade stamp set where you have the outline and details as well as the background. I cut some out of yellow and embossed them on white, but I ended up not using them. Here is the punch, and you can see it punches out all 3 butterfly images at one time. I have one more set of butterflies stamped, and I put it on a small piece of paper, which is going to be a little bit tricky to fit in the punch. So I added a sticky note for a handle. I focus on the base of the wings where they connect to the body and make sure that they're all lined up and then give it a punch. Before gluing each butterfly down, I folded it in half gently and applied glue just to where the body was at. That way the wings would have some lift. There's a lot going on with this card, and I decided to keep the pink color palette. I had planned on using the flower embellishments that came with the Velvet Meadow paper, but I realized that they were too chunky and these clear rhinestones were much better. Let's do an envelope test now. When I fold this one up and place it in a standard A2 envelope, you will see that the flap closes really nicely and it is smooth. The flap comes all the way down as it was designed. On my original card, it was 4 1/4 inches wide, and because of the thickness of this card, it doesn't fit in the envelope very well. You will see here that when I close the flap of the envelope, it is actually bending around the thickness of the card. That's not as attractive. Here is the completed card. I used the new Velvet Meadow, and this paper has white velvet on the actual DSP. It has really incredible texture. Here's one last look at the 3 cards I have made so far with this technique. I will list the products used for all 3 of these cards in the details below. I am Layla Harris, and I go by Crafty Layla on all social media and YouTube. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more card making tutorials. Have a great day and stay crafty.